All right, everybody. So good afternoon and welcome to the last of our April webinar sessions. My name is Michael Ledesma, and I'm going to be talking to you today about planning content-based learning lessons and incorporating them into your online classes. So if you guys are ready, we'll just go ahead and jump into the presentation. So let me just go ahead and open that up and we'll begin, okay? Let's see. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Yep. And let's go ahead and start. Let me move this over here. All right. So everybody, once again, thank you for joining us today. My name is Michael Ledesma. I'm the chief editor here at Any Build and Grow. And today I'm going to be talking to you about planning your online lessons for content-based learning with InsightLink, which is one of our book series that includes or is based around this content-based learning principle. So let's go ahead and start by going over the agenda. So the first thing we're going to talk about is developing the necessary skills for today's global environment. So before we talk about the book or any of the contents or any of the teaching tips or skills, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the more general skills that our students are going to need for today's global environment. And from there, we're going to talk a little bit about how we should think about teaching these skills in our classrooms. Then from that, we're going to move into content-based learning. We're going to talk a little bit about the theories and ideas behind it. And then we'll move into what is called CLIL, which is content and language integrated learning. And this is content-based learning, but specifically tailored for a secondary language student base. So we're going to talk a little bit about how content-based learning can be used in a secondary language classroom. And from there, we're going to move into the InsightLink series, which is a content-based series, which has all kinds of materials that are based around this kind of learning or pedagogy. And we're going to do 2 lesson overviews, actually, one in a lower level and one in a little bit of a higher level, so you can get a feeling for how different types of students should be taught. And then as we go through that, we'll talk a little bit about online teaching tips and how to use the material in an online classroom to get the most out of your time with your students. And finally, we will do a wrap up and a little review of what we've talked about throughout this presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. And let's start by talking about 21st century skills. So the first thing I want to do is I want to ask you guys, how many of you have heard about 21st century skills? Just click on your thumbs up icon toward the bottom of your screen if you have it. So I'll click on mine here, and so you can see what I'm talking about. Where's my thumbs up icon? Ah, there we go. Okay, great. So it seems like some of you have already heard about 21st century skills. So let me go ahead and ask Socorro Molina what she knows about 21st century skills. So let me go ahead and unmute and let me pin you. So hi, Socorro. Can you hear me?
Hi, hello, yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, can you tell us a little bit about 21st century skills and what you know about it?
Well, exactly the skills, the ones that the children have to develop today, now in these days, this is specifically this part they're using of technology, teaching and learning, because we are teaching them through screen. So we have to help them to develop the 4 abilities they need in order to learn as a second language.
Okay, that's very good. So one thing that I caught from what you said there was that they need 4 abilities. So can you list those 4? Do you know what those 4 are?
This is reading, writing, listening, and speaking.
Okay, very good. So listening, writing, reading, and speaking. So those are the four kind of traditional skills that we associate with language learning. Thank you very much, Socorro. All right, so when it comes to 21st century skills more specifically, there is something called the 4 Cs. So in language learning, of course, we have reading, writing, listening, and speaking, but for the 21st century particularly, there are 4 C skills that start with the letter C that we are going to be focusing on, which are essential inside the classroom. So let's go ahead and start with the first one. The first one is creativity. Okay, it's the ability to think of new ideas and exhibit innovation, originality, and inventiveness. So we need to figure out ways to get our students to be more creative and to engage their curiosity and creativity with our lessons. So that's the first one. The second one is collaboration. Okay, it's the ability to work with others effectively. The third one is communication, the ability to listen and express oneself effectively using oral, written, and nonverbal communication methods in diverse contexts and settings, right? So far, creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking, okay? The ability to use reasoning and higher order thinking skills. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a little quiz and see what you think each of these categories looks like, or each of these 4 Cs. So here I've got a little quiz with some boxes, and these are different activities that you will probably use in your classroom, or things that you will do in your classroom. And each of these white boxes corresponds to one of the 4 Cs. So let me start by asking you guys about questioning. If I'm asking my students lots of questions about the material or a text, for example, what is it that I'm doing in terms of the 4 Cs? Which of the 4 Cs am I engaging? So let me ask Bertha Alicia, and let me see if you can hear me, Bertha. Let me unmute you. Okay, 1 second. Why is this not unmuting? All right, how about we move to maybe.
Hello.
Hi, hello?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right, so Bertha, can you tell me in the first box, questioning, hey, which of the 4 Cs do you think questioning is about?
Okay, well, communication. Yes.
Okay, communication, very good. And why do you think it's communication?
Because this is a way to make students speak. Maybe we're talking about a specific topic and we can start asking questions to see how much they know about the topic. And this is how we can start communicating.
Okay, yeah, very good. So when you ask students questions and they respond to you, this is part of a communicative process. And so this is also very important to get them comfortable with speaking, with expressing themselves using the language, right? Yeah.
Yes.
That's very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, okay, questioning definitely involves communication. And one thing that you'll notice is that a lot of these different tasks and categories involve all of the 4 Cs in one way or another. But in this case, particularly, questioning involves critical thinking. Okay, so when we ask questions, we don't just want to ask our students yes, no questions all the time, but we also want to get them to think a little bit more and kind of beyond the specific topic or specific text, and kind of try to make connections with other types of materials or other types of knowledge that they might have beyond that lesson, right? So, okay, let's go ahead and let's try to identify which of the boxes involve creativity. So here you have the creativity in blue, and I'm going to give you guys 20 seconds to try and identify which of these boxes involve creativity. Okay, so 20 seconds, go. All right, so pause for a minute and let's check and see which of these involve creativity. So we've got these three here: developing new ideas, designing presentations, and brainstorming. All of these involve the students kind of using what they already know and synthesizing it to come up with unique and new ideas, right? So, well, how about collaboration we just saw? So we'll just talk about it and then we'll move on. So group and partner tasks, of course, and group discussion. Now for communication, I'm going to give you 10 seconds and I want you to think about which of these boxes involve communication as the particular focus. All right, here we go. So I'm going to show you. And these are reading aloud to others, digital production and digital literacy, and finally presentations, right? Individual, partner, group presentations of all kinds. So students are practicing their communication skills. Finally, critical thinking. We've got questioning, as we said before. We've got reflections. So these are kind of, could be either spoken out loud or could be written, where students write at the end of a lesson, they write a short reflection on the topic and what they think and what they learned. Problem solving and decision making are the final two. All right, so let's go ahead and move on and talk a little bit more about 21st century skills and particularly teaching them. So if you look at this picture here, you'll see that what looks kind of like a network, basically, right? You have lots of little nodes and they're all connected to each other in some way. Now, when it comes to teaching 21st century skills, the important thing to remember is that you are trying to create as many connections through the learning material as you can. All right, so when it comes to asking ourselves what strategies are best suited to teaching these skills, the answer is strategies that encourage students to make connections across distinct subject areas and disciplines. Okay, so for example, let's say that you're learning about science. Well, traditionally, we look at science as one subject with one particular focus, and then we look at art as something completely different and social studies as unrelated. But in the 21st century, more and more, it's becoming more important to draw these connections and create kind of a synthesizing activity with the students so that they realize that, hey, these scientific or this science lesson that we just learned, this has applications in art, or this has applications in society, and we're allowing our students through the lesson to make these connections and to get a richer understanding of the learning material. So another word for this is interdisciplinary studies. And of course, interdisciplinary studies are very complex and quite difficult. And usually you're introduced to these ideas at the university level, but there are ways to do kind of beginner level interdisciplinary studies with younger students by combining the different topics together. And there's a way of doing that, which I'm going to discuss in a minute. But the question for you right now to kind of think about is how you can plan this type of lesson. Now, luckily, there is a framework already available for you that you can use to create this kind of synthesizing lesson for your students. So if you look at this image, you'll see more or less a basic content-based lesson. So in the middle here of the picture, you see that it says trees. And if you look at these 4 boxes here, those 4 boxes are each one lesson in a chapter. So around the main theme of trees, you can see that each of these lessons is based on a different subject, but with a focus on the same theme, which is in this case trees. So let's look at this for a second. Number 1, the first lesson is the parts of a tree. And as you can see here, this would be a scientific lesson. So we'd learn about the parts of a tree from a science perspective. Then we'd move on to Stuttgart, a tree-friendly city. And this would be a social studies lesson where students learn about the importance of trees in a social context and how trees can change a city and can change people's quality of life. From there, we would move to, tree animals, learning about different animals and how they make their homes in the trees. And then here we've got a story, a narrative in the subject of literature, which is called The Story of the Almond Trees. And so students would get to read a short story about the importance of trees in this kind of fable. So what is content-based learning? It's an instructional method that involves choosing a theme and studying various aspects through the course of a unit, in this case, trees, and we're looking at trees in a variety of ways, and we're bringing all of that together to create this kind of synthesis. So it covers different subject areas. It gives students a broader context to apply their learning, and it helps them make connections and find relationships across subjects, right? So if you think about some of the kind of coolest or most interesting developments so far in the 21st century, things like smartphones, right? These were people, or the engineers who built these tools were people who were thinking about lots of different things and finding ways to bring them together, things that didn't really seem to go together necessarily, right? Telephone that has a touch screen, which also has all kinds of apps and features. So that was very new. And somebody had to think that they were going to connect all of these different things together and kind of synthesize. And so this type of lesson is kind of the similar activity or similar mindset, but in miniature, or at least at the very beginning stages. And so this is what we are trying to foster in our students with this type of lesson. Okay, now the question is why? Why do we need to teach them this? So if I'm an English teacher, typically I'm going to teach them according to a kind of traditional framework, which is we're going to do maybe phonics, grammar, reading, we're going to do listening, right? So why content-based learning? This seems to me to be just kind of reading. And so it might have good reading applications, but it doesn't seem like there's much more beyond that. Well, the reason is that when students are involved in a language learning classroom, they typically approach it in a way that is kind of limiting. So if you look at this picture here, you see that in the first picture, there's a boy and he's sitting at his computer and he's learning about all kinds of different subjects, right? He's learning about geography, maybe math, there's some math symbols. So he's doing his kind of general education. And then here on the side, we've got a bunch of people talking and communicating, right? So typical language learning is usually communication specific, right? And it tends to focus on everyday conversations and topics. Now, from the point of view of a student, right, this could be interesting, but it could also be kind of limiting because think about it. If I'm a student in a class and I'm learning a secondary language and all I'm learning is how to say hello, my name is, and I'm happy, and all of these kinds of things, I'm going to feel like this isn't maybe so interesting if I don't have more opportunities to use the language outside of the classroom, which is often the case. So the result is that the students kind of lose motivation. They're like, okay, now it's time for English class. I'm going to learn how to say hello and how I feel, but I'm not really learning anything interesting. Well, and so, yeah, so students view language learning as something separate and distinct from general education under kind of normal circumstances, right? But the cool thing about content-based learning is that you're getting the best of both worlds. So you're getting to teach students according to actual substantive material, the way you would teach a science lesson or a math lesson or a literature lesson. So the topics are inherently interesting and kind of spark the students' curiosity, but you're doing it specifically in the framework of language learning. So you're kind of, the flexibility that you have is giving you the best of both worlds. Now, so moving from content-based learning, we have something called CLIL. So CLIL is Content and Language Integrated Learning. And what CLIL is taking the idea of learning through content and applying that to secondary language frameworks. So this is geared specifically toward students who are secondary language learners. So what is it? It's designed to provide L2 learners with language instruction through subject-oriented lessons. And it gives language learning a real purpose, right? When you approach a lesson and it's about a topic, whether it be science or social studies, it's interesting. And then you're also learning the language on the side, but the topic itself is interesting, which gives us that additional motivation. Also, it can increase your students' motivation to learn what you're teaching them, right? And it helps students develop a stronger cultural understanding and an ability to see the big picture. So if we're structuring our lessons around this one theme, and then with the different subjects around it and looking at it from different perspectives, like the same theme, then we're kind of giving our students more experience looking at the big picture and focusing in and out of theme and then subject, theme and subject. So if you look at this picture here, you see what looks like a kind of an electrical socket, right? And the idea is that you're integrating these two things, language learning and subject-based learning. And here you have a picture of a kind of a visual representation of CLIL and where CLIL is on a spectrum between second language learning on the one side and English, full English immersion on the other, right? So CLIL is in that nice kind of medium spot. So it's not too much about immersion where you're not learning language, but you must already know it. So it's not like that. You are learning language, but you're doing it also not only tailored to communication, but also to substantive learning. Okay, so let's move on. Let's look at what a concrete lesson in this framework looks like. All right, so here we have a chapter, right? And this chapter is out of one of the lower levels, right? This is a starter level 3 book in the Insight Link series. And this is about San Francisco. So as you can see, we're going to be learning about San Francisco from a lot of different perspectives. And the first lesson would be a social studies lesson about the city. The next one would be about art and a particular public art project. Then we would learn about the Golden Gate Bridge, and that's another social studies lesson. And finally, science, and we'll learn about sea lions. Okay, so let me move this. Can everybody see the screen? I think you guys can see this, the full screen here. Let me move this. Yeah. Okay, so if you look at the bottom left, you'll see that on this page, the very first page of the chapter, you have what is called a big idea question. And the question is kind of a basic general question to get your students engaged, right? So what do you know about San Francisco? So we've got our title, our big idea, and we've got our central unifying theme and our general thematic question. Now, this lesson that I'm going to show you today is about the Golden Gate Bridge. So let's go ahead and let's move on. Now, before we start talking about the Golden Gate Bridge, we've got this kind of preview section where we're going to just talk about bridges in general. So here we've got a warm-up question. It says, here are some famous bridges from around the world. What do you think of them? So you're going to ask your students to just look at these pictures of these bridges. You're going to tell them what the names are, and you're going to ask them what they think. Now, typically, a teacher would say, okay, guys, so what do you think about this bridge? And the students would answer. But because this is an English lesson, a lot of times the students don't have the vocabulary to answer this, in a way that is kind of conducive to learning and expressing themselves fluently. So what we have to do is we have to kind of front load or provide some examples for them to use so that as they are practicing, they're also learning at the same time. So here I've just come up with this really simple example box for a descriptive exercise. And in this case, we've got the structure. So when the students are practicing, they're already using the structure. And here it's a very simple sentence. I think blank looks, and then we've got some adjectives. So let me go ahead and ask somebody to choose a bridge and tell me what they think about that bridge. But we're going to use this structure. I think bridge looks, and then we're going to use some of these adjectives. All right, so let me go ahead and unmute Alejandro PFX. So Alejandro, hello.
Hello, hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So Alejandro, can you please give me an example sentence with, or choosing one of the bridges and tell me how you think it looks?
Okay, I think the Alto Bridge in Venice, Italy, looks very old and romantic.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you so much, Alejandro. Thanks for participating. All right, everybody. So now I'm the teacher and the student gave me a really good word that I didn't provide for them, romantic, right? And that's an excellent word. I'm going to add that so that other students can use that if they'd like, right? And I also like that Alejandro added the location of the bridge also, which I didn't originally include in my sentence, right? But we want to kind of do this activity in this way, right? We want to give the students a structure first, and then they can add things if they want to, if they feel like it's necessary, or you can add things as a teacher, right? But if I just say, okay, guys, what do you think? And then somebody, students can just say, it's big or it's old, but we're not really getting uh, a lot of learning out of that. I mean, it's still pretty good, but it's better if it's structured. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It's good to give structure ahead of time so that they can then practice. Now, let's go ahead and move from that and ask the students which one they like the most to kind of personalize the lesson. So the question is, which bridge do you like the best and what do you like about it? So the answer would be, I like blah, blah, blah bridge, and because I like the design, okay? I like the shape, I like the mood. So hold on, let me go to annotate here. Let me erase this. All right, so let me get one volunteer to choose their favorite bridge here and tell me what they like. Okay, so you're gonna tell me, I like blah, blah bridge, and I like the design, the shape, the mood, or whatever it is. Let me choose Diego Rincon. Diego. Oh, sorry. Hold on. It's not unmuting. Why is that not working? All right, let me move on to maybe, interesting. All right, so we'll move on. That's okay. We'll come back to it later. But anyway, so here you're personalizing the question to give your students an opportunity to express their feelings, but you're doing it in a very controlled and structured way. All right. So the next part of the lesson, as you can see here, is the background link section. So this provides some kind of background information about the particular lesson, in this case, bridges. So you'll give this to your students, you'll read it out loud, and then maybe you'll discuss it a little bit, right? Bridges extend across seas, rivers, or roads, and people use bridges to cross from one side to another. All right, so that's the first introductory section. Now we will move on to some vocabulary. So at the bottom of the page, you see that you have some vocabulary words here that you're going to be teaching your students, and these are going to be in the passage. All right, so one second, let me get rid of this red mark. All right, so you've got these vocabulary words. Now, one cool thing you can do with your students is you've got these vocabulary questions at the back of the book. What you can do is you can get this and just bring it up front and give them a kind of quiz on vocabulary straight away, right? Before we even start, we're going to ask them to see how much they know. So everybody, here, looking at these two pictures, which picture shows different landmarks? Is it A or is it B? What do you guys think? Type it in the chat box. Is it A or B? And I'm going to look and see what answers we got. So let's see the chat. All right. So we've got A. Lots of people are saying A. All right. So it's very good. That's correct. It is A. And so we go through our vocabulary words, right? And that's basically it, right? Then we can move on to our lesson and our students can go ahead and read it and understand everything, right? Is that true? What do you guys think? All right, hold on. Guys, do not annotate on the slide because I have to keep erasing it and it's kind of annoying. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So if you look at this passage, this is the passage. However, Sometimes in passages, we have vocabulary that are not included in the vocabulary list, but are a little bit difficult for the students to understand. So you as a teacher can go ahead and look through and kind of think about which ones might be hard, and then you can add those to your vocabulary practice at the beginning. So let's look at this and tell me in the chat box which of these words you think might be a little bit difficult for students, okay? Just based on your intuition as a teacher. We've got landmark as a vocabulary word, but what else is difficult here? So go ahead and type it in the chat box. The Golden Gate Bridge is an iconic landmark. It is the symbol of San Francisco, right? Only in the red box, these two first sentences. Okay, straight is one of the vocabulary words, so that's okay. Iconic, maybe. Yeah, that's very good. So iconic might be difficult. Students might not know what iconic means. Also, symbol is one, right? I would think that if my students are a little bit at a lower level, they might not know what symbol means. So I'm going to read through this and I'm going to choose words that are not already included, and I'm going to bring them in and include them so that I don't have to explain them later. So how do I do that? Easy, I just add them here. So next question, which of these shows a symbol of love, do you think? Right, so I've got these two pictures here, A and B. If my students are kind of clever, they won't know what symbol is, but they know what love is, and they know that the heart and roses are symbols of love in a sense, right? They have a conceptual understanding. So then we'll look at the pictures, we'll say, okay, A is the correct answer, and then, well, what is symbol? A symbol is something that means something. So in this case, a heart means love, so it is a symbol of love, right? And you can kind of explain how representation works like that. And so you've got your vocabulary and you're introducing the other vocabulary, and now you're actually ready to read. So we've got our lesson here, typical lesson. It's a passage about the Golden Gate Bridge. We start with the let's focus question. Why is the Golden Gate Bridge popular? So students are going to be able to answer that after they've read the passage. The answer is in the passage, right? Now, when it comes to comprehension questions, right, one thing that we can do is we can ask questions as we go. And I'm sure most of you do this in your classes all the time, right? You read a short part of the passage and then you ask just to confirm that students are understanding. But one thing we can do is we can actually make that into an exercise and make it kind of fun. So let's go ahead and read this red box here, and then we're going to do a little comprehension exercise, okay? I'll give you 10 seconds. Go. All right, so everybody ready? Let's move on. All right, now I've got a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge here, and I want to check the comprehension of the passage that I just read. And that passage was about San Francisco and where it got its name from, or the Golden Gate Bridge, where it got its name from, and where it's located, what it connects. So this is a good picture to kind of ask about that. All right, so I'm going to tell my students here on this side, this is San Francisco. Now, I want you to tell me, what is A? Okay, so everybody type it in the chat box. What is this thing here in A? And of course, your students are going to tell you that it is the Golden Gate Bridge, right? And then you're going to ask them, okay, great. So where does the Golden Gate Bridge get its name from? Is it because it's gold? And they're going to say, no, it's not gold. It's reddish orange. It gets its name from the Golden Gate Strait. And then you're going to ask them, okay, perfect. So here, this water underneath the bridge, what is that? What is that called? Right? Your students are going to say, oh, that's the strait. That's the Golden Gate Strait. So the bridge extends across the Golden Gate Strait, and it connects San Francisco to this other place in the north. Right? That was part of the passage. So here, letter C, what is the name of this part or this area? Can anybody type that in the chat box for me? Golden Gate Bridge connects San Francisco to blah, blah in the north. So what is blah, blah? And the answer, if we go back to the passage, is here, Marin County. So the bridge connects San Francisco and Marin County in the north. So students should tell you it's Marin County. Very good. All right, so this is a very quick and easy comprehension check. And we've given students a visual so that it helps them kind of synthesize the information a lot easier and a lot better, and it makes it more meaningful to them than just to kind of imagine what Marin County is and what it means for the bridge to connect San Francisco to the Marin County across the strait, right? You're showing them exactly what it means. So as a teacher, you have to kind of think of ways to do this and to incorporate this kind of visual learning into your lesson, right? Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next part of the passage, right? And I'm gonna give you guys 10 seconds, maybe a little bit more, 15, to read through this because it's 2 little paragraphs. And then we're gonna do another comprehension exercise based on the same picture. So 15 seconds, go. Okay, all right, so let's test your comprehension and your memory, and let's see how good they are. All right, whoa. Okay, so I'm gonna put this picture of this boat here. So everybody, what is this boat called? In the passage, they were talking about this type of boat. Can anybody tell me the name of this boat in the chat box? What is this called? Let's see what answers we get. A ferry, that's very good, yes, a ferry. Now, San Francisco, it had lots of ferries in the past, but there was a problem with the ferries. Can anyone tell me what the problem was? They were too something, right? So what were they? The ferries were too crowded. Excellent, very good. So the ferries were too crowded, there were too many people, and so the city decided to do what to fix this problem? The city decided to build a bridge. Perfect, so this is very good. All right, thank you. Now, let's move on and let's look over here. So here we've got some people, and what do people like to do when they come to San Francisco to see the Golden Gate Bridge? What do they do usually? So here I've got a picture of something. Aha, nice. They take pictures. Okay, very good. And when do they like to take pictures the best? When's the best time to take pictures? Can anyone tell me that? Taking pictures. Very early. Okay, that's good. In the morning fog. So here I've got some clouds. Oh, I've got some clouds to represent the morning fog. And so the students would tell me that. So very good. So it seems that you guys understand the passage very well. I'm confirming that through the answers that you're giving me, right? Through the feedback that I'm getting from you. And all of this we did with one picture and just, you know, adding little elements here and there. So you can do something like this in your classes and get, you know, do comprehension checks with your students, and it helps them retain the information a lot better. All right, so going back to the passage, we've got the final question. So after we've read the whole thing, we're at the link to self section. And now we're going to ask the students, is there a famous bridge in your town or country? Now, again, you ask the students this question, and maybe they know, maybe they don't know. This is kind of a lower level, so it might be the case that your students don't know any bridges. So what you can do is you can prepare beforehand some examples, and you can teach them about bridges, and then later you can let them choose the one they like best. So I've got a picture of a bridge here. Now, so to the participants in Mexico, does anyone know this bridge, what it's called? This is a bridge in Mexico. So can anyone tell me what this bridge is called? Let me see if you guys know. Let me see if I get some answers here. All right, so it seems like we're not quite sure, so I'll just give it to you. This is called the Baluarte Bridge, right? So this bridge connects two areas of Mexico, Sinaloa and Durango, and it extends across the Baluarte River, all right? So now I'm teaching my students about another bridge, but this is in the context of their own city or country, and so it gives them, it personalizes the lesson more. All right, so here's another bridge, and this bridge is for our Brazilian participants. Does anybody know where this bridge, what this bridge is, or where it's located? Any ideas? All right, so this is the Octavio Frias de Oliveira Bridge. It's located in Sao Paulo, and it extends across the Pinheiros River. All right, well, Brasilia was a good guess, right? It looks kind of similar to the government building there. All right, and then we've got one more example, which is this bridge here. This is in Panama. The name of this bridge is the Bridge of the Americas, connects La Boca to La Cona, and it extends across the mouth of the Panama Canal. Now, in your classroom, you can have lots of different bridges from around your country or town, and the students can choose the one they like best, and then you can actually have them do a presentation about this. And it could be very short and simple and based on the language that we've learned in the passage. So, simple, how do we do that? A famous bridge in my town or country, up to them, is, right, the name. Hold on one second. Yeah, so it connects this area to this other area, or you can say it is located in, and then you explain where it extends over, right? It could be a river usually, or some kind of area. And finally, I like the bridge because it is blank, so an adjective, right? Because it is beautiful, it is strong, it is big. And so you're giving your students basically the same language that they saw in the passage, but now they get to use it to express their own idea. And it's very simple, straightforward. You can even have them kind of print out a picture and then present verbally. And you can even make it more challenging by having them memorize this short presentation and give it orally without referring to the paper or the page, right? And you can maybe ask the parents to get involved and kind of train with them, right? Drill the presentation so that when it comes time to present, they can do it without looking at any kind of paper, right? Okay, so at the end of the lesson, you would see something like this. This is a comprehension check and some other activities. Like here, we've got this really cool activity called the Find Evidence section, where students have to go back to the passage and check if this sentence is true or not, right? So the bridge's name came from its color. Students have to go back and check and see, oh, that's actually not true, right? Now, because we've done so much comprehension work already and we've asked students so many times and we've shown them so many pictures, this is something that they should be able to do by themselves. And at this point, it should be easy for them, right? So usually teachers, sometimes we just go through the passage and then we ask them to do the comprehension. But by doing it earlier, we can give them more independence when it comes time to do this by themselves. And this is one of the things that we actually want to encourage is students to independently be able to answer these kinds of questions and fill out all of these charts and this information. Okay, so wrap up. Which 4 activities did we use in our lesson? We used structured speaking at the beginning. We did a vocabulary warm-up, and we included vocabulary that was not part of the lesson, but that was in the passage that we kind of guessed students might have trouble with. We did a comprehension check, and we also incorporated a link to self-presentation. All right, so let's move on to higher level instruction so you can see what a higher level lesson would look like. Okay, so this is from book 5. So this is the second highest level, and this is between A2 and B1 level in the CEFR. And this is going to be a chapter about films, right? So again, films is the theme, and you've got lots of lessons based around films, but from different perspectives, right? So you've got a science lesson, you've got art, history, and social studies. And again, you've got this big idea section down here. And the question is, what is the best movie you've ever seen and why? So again, I'm going to give my students a structure, and then they're going to fill out that structure when we talk about it so that they have something to rely on and so that the answers that they're giving me are already in perfect English, right? We can let them answer freely, but we also want them to get used to using correct English so that they form a habit. And this is a really good way of doing that. So here the sentence is, the best movie I've ever seen is blank because, and then we've got an independent clause afterwards. So I've given some examples here, and of course students can come up with their own, right? My 4 examples are, it has amazing special effects. The acting is realistic. It has an exciting plot. it made me think about what I would do if I were in the main character's position. Right? So let me go ahead and give you guys about 10 seconds to think about your favorite movie and why you like it. And then after those 10 seconds, I want you to write it in the chat box, okay? In the same way that you see it here on this whiteboard. The best movie I've ever seen is blank because blank. So go ahead, guys, think about it a little bit, and I want to see your answers in the chat box, okay? So as you guys are thinking about that a little bit, I'll give you a pretty simple, straightforward example, right? So let's say the best movie I've ever seen is Pulp Fiction because because it has an exciting plot. Okay. Now here somebody says the best movie I've ever seen is Fight Club because it has an exciting plot. The best movie I've ever seen is Star Wars because it has amazing special effects. Okay, so this is very good. We're getting lots of excellent examples here. And the best part about it is that they are all incorrect grammar. Now here in the Fight Club example, I would correct the student and I would say, okay, this is very good. The only thing we want to do is we want to get rid of the before Fight Club. We don't need the because the movie is called Fight Club. Right? So we've got a couple other examples here. The best movie I've ever seen is Her because it made me think about what I would do if I were in the main character's position. And the best movie I've ever seen is A Walk in the Clouds because it has an exciting plot. Okay, so this is very good. So already we're off to a good start and we can go ahead and move on to our lesson. Now the students are engaged, they've thought about their own preferences and they're ready to learn more. So the lesson we're going to do on this topic is special effects in movies, right? We've got our background link here, which explains some information about special effects. And then we've got 3 types of special effects that we're going to learn about before we go into the lesson. So let's go ahead and read these. And then I've blanked this out so that I give you a chance to kind of think about it and I don't give you the answer right away. So let's start with this one. Imagine you're shooting a winter scene during the summer. What would you do? So how would you shoot that scene? What do you need to make that scene happen? All right, so let's see in the chat box, guys. Tell me, what do you need to shoot a winter scene in summer? Any ideas? For example, how would you make fake snow? Aha, fake snow, yeah. So how would you make it? What do you need to make fake snow? What can you use?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Oh yeah, so if you wanted to make fake snow to shoot the winter scene, what materials would you use? Ah, somebody said styrofoam. Yeah, this is very good. Perfect. All right, so let me unblock what it says here so you can see what the book is telling us. It says you can make fake snow with laundry soap flakes. All right, now the same thing for these two. How would you shoot a scene with explosions without using real bombs? Give the students a chance to think about it, and then we give them the answer, which is using CGI, computer-generated imagery, is a good way to safely create these kinds of scenes. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so what is the purpose of blocking this stuff out? The purpose is that you give your students a chance to think about it first, right? You don't want to give them the answer right away because it takes away from their kind of creativity. We want to see what they think first, and then we can give them the book's answer. But blanking things out like this is actually a really useful tool in a lot of cases also. So it's a good strategy that you can use. All right, now, so we've got these 3 and we're talking about effects, how they're made and what they're used for, right? And they all follow the same pattern. So if I'm teaching this lesson, I'm going to think, okay, great. So this is a great organizational tool that I can use actually to help my students a little bit. So I'm going to give my students a preparatory framework. And this basically, the information is already organized this way. So all you have to do is make it explicit so that students understand, oh, okay, this is how information is organized, right? And getting your students in the habit of thinking in this way is going to be really good because it's going to transfer into their writing skills, right? It's going to transfer into how they think, and we want our students to be organized mentally, right? So let's go ahead and talk about those 3 effects, and let's fill out these boxes. So the first effect was fake snow, and the question is, what is it used for, and how is it created? So let me look at the chat box. Guys, type it in the chat box. What's it used for, and how is it created? And somebody here asked me, would it be good if you asked them to Google the question? I think in this case, we don't want to get Google involved yet, because we just want them to kind of think using their prior knowledge, right? We can use Google beforehand to prepare answers for them and to kind of, preempt what they might say, but we don't really want them wasting time looking at stuff on Google during the class. So it's better for us to kind of do that first and give it to them, right? All right, now what it's used for, it's used to pretend it's snowing. It's used to shoot a snow scene, and it is created with laundry soap flakes out of detergent, winter scenes. Very good. So shooting a winter scene during the summer. So it's used for shooting a winter scene during the summer, and it's created with laundry soap flakes. All right, so that's the first one. We'd go through the rest of them. And what we've got here is we've got a nice little organizational chart for our students, right? And so from this, now that they already have this framework in their mind, right, they're thinking, okay, so I'm thinking about special effects, what they're used for and how they're made. With those categories already kind of shaping their approach to the lesson, they're going to be better prepared to find this information in the passage that we're going to be moving to. All right, so if we go to the passage, you'll see that there are 3 special effects. And of course, the passage is organized in a very similar way, because when we talk about special effects, we want to know what they're used for and how they're made or how they're created, right? So having this already kind of at the forefront of the lesson will help your students organize the information and eventually remember it better. Okay, so what special effects do movie directors use is the let's focus question. And you're going to ask that at the beginning so that students can read through and then give you an answer at the end, right? So we've got miniatures, matte painting, and stop motion. We're going to learn about those 3 types of effects. And again, we're going to put them into this organizational framework. So you can even have your students make this into a writing exercise. So you can tell them, okay, everybody take out a paper and a pencil, and I want you to write in what the effect is, what it's used for, and how it's created as we read through the lesson. So we're going to read, then I'll give you some time to fill out this chart and just make a chart on your page and fill it in, right? Now, if we get to the end of the lesson, you'll see up here in the right-hand corner or upper right-hand corner that there's already something like that, right? But usually, or oftentimes, we have that at the end to kind of organize what they've learned. But we can also do that as we're learning, in the middle of the process, so that it's helping them kind of retain the information. It's helping them organize as they go. So we can do it at the end, but we can also do it at the middle or in the middle. And the point is that you as a teacher have a lot of flexibility in how you plan the lesson and how you incorporate these ideas, right? You don't have to rely on the book all the time. You can kind of mix and match. And depending on what works best for you, you can put activities at different parts of the lesson, right? So I like to do this organizational stuff towards the beginning to get students in the frame of mind to start thinking about organizing information from the get-go, from the beginning. All right, so we're back at this text. We've read through the whole thing. We know all about miniatures and matte painting and stop motion. And now we're going to go to the link to self question to give students an opportunity to think about this, with their own experiences. So the question is, do you know of any other interesting examples of special effects in movies? And Again, you can let the students answer that question. You don't really want them to Google because you're just killing time and they might not find anything interesting. So you can actually Google it beforehand and come up with some examples for them if they're having a hard time thinking of their own. So here we've got other types of visual effects. So let's go ahead and look at these pictures. Now, I'm sure all of you have seen this before. So let's see, what is this called? Can anybody tell me in the chat box? What is the name of this type of effect? All right, very good, yes. So Celine de Guerrero says green screen, and that is correct. So that is a green screen, very good. And then again, if we think about it in that framework that we were looking at before, we can think about what it's used for and how it's made. So what is a green screen used for? Think about that. It's used for for computer graphics that would be put into a scene afterwards. Okay, and how is it made? It's made with a green screen and the actors acting in front of it. Okay, now here we've got another type of visual effect, and this one is called motion capture. And then we would explain or we would let the students give us the answer based on what they think even, right? So this is called motion capture, and how do you think this is made, and what do you think it's used for? And from the picture, they can kind of intuit, right? That the man is going to be made into a chimpanzee through special effects. And then you can even ask them, what do you think the dots are for? And so the dots are called tracking dots, and they're used to map the different facial features so that when the face moves, then the chimpanzee's face will move in the same way, right? We've got another one, color grading. So you can ask them to look at both sides and ask them what what's different about each of the sides, right? They'll tell you, oh, this one, the colors are more dramatic or more vibrant, right? And then finally, you've got this thing called doubling, which is when you take one actor and you put them in many places at once, right? So I've found these, students might come up with their own examples, but I found these just in case they have a hard time, so that I'm still giving them more information and we're not wasting too much time in the class. Right now, since these are new and we only discussed how they're created and what they're used for verbally, we can actually give our students a writing assignment, and we can actually have them write out what they think these different effects are used for. So going back to this preparatory framework, now we can actually use this to frame a writing exercise. So I've got my 4 movie effects. I'll let my students choose one effect, and then I've got this box here that I've created, which is a kind of guideline for them, which has the the grammatical structure already in place, so that all they have to do is fill in the blanks. And then once they're done with that, they've done their writing exercise. We can also do a presentation here if we'd like, but it would go something like this, right? The special effect I'd like to write or talk about is green screen, right? Or motion capture. It is used for or to, and here it would be important to stop and do a kind of a grammar explanation and let your students know that when you use for, you need a verb with the ing. If you're using to, then you use the infinitive verb, and then you give them some examples of how to use that so that when they write, they can do it in the right way. And finally, it is created with noun or using noun also, right? So you've got your structure, the students are ready to go, they've chosen their effect, and now they can actually do their presentation. And this is an exercise that is basically built into the book. It's not in the book, but you can just draw this exercise out based on the information that you have. And it's very easy, simple. It gives the students a chance to write, practice grammar, in using the language that they're learning from the reading passage. Right, and then here we have our graphic organizer again, and we've got the reading comprehension, and we use this special effects, we use this framework to kind of build our lesson around, but we can also do this summary box. So at the end, you can actually have students write a summary of the passage using their own words, and then come back and do this, and then they can compare and contrast, see what they missed. So what did you forget? What do you need to remember next time? And it could be kind of like a diagnostic tool that you can use and students can use to see how much information they're remembering from the passage. So there's a lot of things that you can do. And all of these students can do on their own on a piece of paper. And so you can do this very easily if you're doing online teaching, because again, these are activities that students can do independently. All right, now let's go ahead and wrap this up so that we can then move on and kind of do a more general wrap up. So the question is, what did we give students to answer the big idea question, and why did we give them that? So what did we give them? We gave them a structure, a grammar structure. And why did we give it to them? We gave it to them so that they already have perfect English when they're expressing themselves, so they can create a habit out of using correct language. Then the next question is, what did we do with the special effects information, and why did we do that? So we put it into a preparatory framework, and we did that to help the students not only organize the information, but get used to thinking about information in an organizational way and approaching reading texts with an organizational mindset, right? Then what is the purpose of giving students a preparatory framework, right? To get them in the habit of thinking organizationally. Why did we prepare our own examples in advance? Easy, so that we don't waste time Googling, and because sometimes students, you know, they have a hard time coming up with examples, so we are prepared for that eventuality, right? Then the next question, what exercise did we give students to wrap up? We gave them a presentation exercise, right? We have them write their own ideas. They get to choose one of the special effects that we came up with, and they're going to write about it. And what was the goal of that exercise? To get them not only to write, but to express themselves using correct language, and to go beyond the boundaries of the lesson, of the passage, and include more information from outside, and to kind of build a broader knowledge base based on the same topic that we're learning about. So we always want to do this, right? We want to give our students, we want to get them in the habit of going beyond the limits of the lesson, right? Because you're reading a passage, and the passage itself is great and has great information, but it's related to lots of other things in the real world that you can actually get your students to think about if you branch out and kind of broaden the perspective and give them more examples, more information to work with. All right, so the materials that we were using, they come out of this series, right? This is called Insight Link. And so Insight Link is, as we talked about before, it's a content-based it's a content-based series. So it's all reading passages, and reading passages organized according to themes, and then chapters or lessons around the theme. And so the idea is that the students are kind of getting into this habit of synthesizing information and making these connections between all of these different subject areas, but around a theme. So it gets them into this interdisciplinary mindset. Now, the series has 9 levels. The first 3 are starter. So the San Francisco lesson was from starter level 3, and the movie lesson was from level 5. And they go all the way from the kind of A1, very low level, for students who are just completing phonics and are just starting to read independently, to level 6, which is a elementary level B1 in CEFR, right? So to wrap everything up and to give you guys time to ask some questions, let's go ahead and talk about the presentation as a whole. So the first question is, what is the key to students' future success in the 21st century? There were some skills that we talked about. So if you guys can remember those skills, let me go ahead and ask you to write those in the chat box. So guys, what is the key to student success? I'll give you 5 seconds and let's see if anybody can give it to me. Yes, very good. So Gillian says the 4 C's, and that is absolutely correct. Okay, so the 4 C's, or interdisciplinary learning, right? And those were what? Creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. Yes, very good. Somebody got them all. Nice. Thank you, Michael. All right, the next question is, what method of instruction is best suited, or maybe not best suited, but is really well suited to teach interdisciplinary thinking? So what was the name of the method? It was called, I'll give you guys a little bit of time. CLIL, yeah, that's very good. So CLIL, which means content and language integrated learning, which is a type of content-based learning specifically for L2 learners. It's very good. Okay, let me go ahead. Yep, so content-based learning in CLIL. The next question, how can we develop comprehension skills when reading for content? So what's a good way to develop comprehension skills? We can teach our students to organize the information, right? So how do you organize it? You can organize it visually, like we did in the first lesson, or you can organize it in terms of a kind of framework, which is also visual in a way, right? And active reading is very good. Somebody here said Celine. Celine says active reading, which is when you're reading and you're questioning what you've read constantly, right? To make sure that you're understanding. Then next question is, which activity did you find most useful or interesting and why? So this, I can't answer. I'll let you guys think about for a minute. And then I want you to go ahead and type it in and we'll read through some of them. Okay, so think about it. Which activity did you find most useful or interesting and why? I'll give you, about 30 seconds and then let's see what you guys come up with. Oh, we've got Saul Hernandez Lara. Let's see if I can get you over here in the, yeah, let's see. Oh, I've got some answers here. So somebody says connecting information to something personal, like the bridges in my country. All right, very cool. So that's Beto Gutierrez. Thank you, Beto. Maria Monica Sierra says graphic organizers. They can help to organize the ideas and understand in a better way. Very good. Yeah, awesome. Guided writing from Lucero Aguilar. Yes. And Michael says the activity that I found rather interesting was when you were showing pictures in order to check comprehension. It was really dynamic. All right, very cool. Yeah. So I'm very glad that you guys, it seems like you've gotten something out of the presentation, which makes me pretty happy. And yeah, so it's good to, always think about these things in different ways and try to approach teaching these kinds of ideas or these concepts from different perspectives. And using pictures is really helpful. So someone else said, giving the correct structure to students for them to talk properly. Yeah, this is, of course, fundamental, right? So we can let them kind of express themselves without help. Sometimes that's important too, because we want them to just speak freely, to kind of practice their fluency. But we also want to give them structure in the classroom so that they have a good base to then go off and practice their fluency in a correct way, right? All right, everybody. So that is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. And I hope that you guys learned something. I hope you can use some of these techniques in the classroom, hopefully soon. And yeah, once again, thanks for joining and thank you very much.